All right, so today is January 16th, 2022, and we're going to continue our Extinctionati. This is our Western meeting. So did you want to leave, did you guys leave off from a topic from the Eastern meeting that you'd like to discuss?
I think we should go over the difficult paragraph about acceleration, because I don't think we gave that enough of an airing. But yeah, the first thing I'd like to start off with is just bring people's attention to the gyrate reset in this article, this post. That's one that Weticus virus or something like that. What it is, what it is. So should we start with that? Okay, so
yeah,
so
sure.
I mean, I'm not going to share my screen or anything, but I just this post is about here are sections of a Russian report published jointly by the head of Natural Risk Forecasting Department and the National Committee for Environmental Safety. I mean, I don't know. You just got to freaking laugh. It's probably the most important information that possibly you could have. I mean, you talk about burying the headline. It's the most important information that you could probably have on this planet, and it's in this magazine, this Woman's Beauty magazine. It's a Russian beauty and male magazine. It's just like, sometimes you just want to cry. It's it's like there it is in full view. It's a Russian state secret laid out in a woman's magazine. Oh God, these are weird times. But anyway, I read that article. I learned quite a lot from it. The Russians have always been ahead on this by about 2 decades. Yeah, when reading that thing, I kept on thinking, like, I hope there's something that Dmitry Orlov, maybe Dmitry Orlov knows something that we don't. But what I've never seen before is they've, apparently it looks like they've been modeling, deluges, and I've never seen anything like that. I knew about the Drake Strait and the big surge there. You can see it on Google Earth. I was actually going to post something about that surge. I was reading this book called Deluges Through the Ages, which is from about 1838 or something, and it really goes through all this, all the evidence for it from a while back. But yeah, I'm not sure about in the Drake Strait there. I mean, I'm not a geologist, but that looks like water surge to me. It's about 120 million years old, so it's not like the last pole flip. But yeah, I think that I read some papers on it. I went and did some research on it. The guys, they think it's because of the roaring 40s and stuff, and they assume that it's they've affected the sea. But I can't believe that. I mean, for starters, downwind in the roaring 40s, there's Marion Island and stuff like that. I mean, if the wind could do that kind of earth moving, it would have blown Marion Island flat. So the South Sea South Sandwich Islands. They're at the head of that surge. Basically, this surge is at the tip of South America and between the Cape Horn and Antarctica. So it's called the Drake Passage, and it's just all the time there's storms there. It's in the roaring 40s, kind of permanent weather system. So, but if that was true, I think the South, Terra del Fuego, and that it is scoured by wind and east-west and stuff. But a lot of people, it looks like water, but you can definitely see this a surge of either wind or water. But to me, it looks like water erosion. So I think it is feasible that it is to do with the flippening, but it's much older, right? It's much older than, say, the last one. So, but anyway, they take that into account. And yeah, I mean, I would love to get hold of those guys and talk to them, because they obviously have inside information. But I mean, I don't have many Russian contacts or anything, so I don't know how you'd get hold of those guys. But I mean, if you know anybody that can speak Russian or could do Russian or something, I think I'd just love to get hold of those guys. But I just can't believe that they put this stuff out right there in the clear in a woman's magazine, and like, talk about burying the headline. It's like, wow, it's just weird, just freaking weird. Anyway,
and the article is from September 21.
Yeah, it's recent. Yeah, but anyway, I mean, I would recommend, the Russians are well up on this, so I would recommend watching, Putin and stuff. I mean, I would put Putin right up there as one of the guys to survive the flipping. So, I mean, you have to read everything with the flipping in mind. So, if, the race to the Arctic and stuff, it's sold as, everybody's converging on the Arctic, and it's sold as, well, the Arctic's going to be ice-free soon and stuff. And I think there's a little more to it than that. It seems to me that Russia is making plans. They seem to think the Arctic has a new destiny beyond climate change, maybe. But it's worth watching all of that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to raise that, so, highlight it. Yeah, bloody interesting times, but it's just so bizarre, isn't it? That you just it's just put out there, just bald-faced, and it's like not picked up by a single Western media. It's like, just, I mean, come on, just spare a bit of sympathy for me, guys. I mean, it's just like, I'd be just living, that Don't Look Up movie for years, and you just can't tell anybody about this stuff. They can't hear. It's like that movie is my life, man. So, but anyway, we just keep on going. And nothing I've worked is actually, to actually tell people. It's just a message you just can't tell people. It's just, I don't know how to make it stick. But anyway, we're still trying.
I sent the manifesto to that Phil Tinline guy. Yeah, nothing yet, but I don't know. We'll see. I just said, yeah, we're a cult, and we got a manifesto. Thought you might like to have a look at it, and yeah, like maybe we could do an interview with you, just straight up, just But I don't know if you read his bio on there. He's done quite a lot of documentaries, and he looks like a sort of interesting guy. Yeah, I think the most recent one was a Radio 4 program on conspiracy theories. Leading historical narrative documentaries for Radio 4.
Yeah, I like this bio. I did read it. I thought it was good. Yeah,
it's quite a good bio.
Just keep on pecking away at it, and I guess at some stage we'll get lucky, I guess. But yeah. Anyway, so that's that, and then okay, so then unless anybody's got any more about it, but one more thing I thought we should in the future we should start talking about, the PGS, the point of greatest survival, and I want to hear people's thoughts and stuff. And it'd be nice, I think, if we all went and did some research and picked, and came up and do some research, pick your own, and let's look at them.
But I read the article, that magazine, and I saw that they talk about coups and somersaults, and they talk about a slow flip or a fast flip. That there's two scenarios that they're giving.
Yeah, that's one. So there's the
first one is looks like a total extinction for everyone. The slow, like a very bad, but not as bad.
So in various mythologies and stuff, there are indications of up to 5 days. So there's various myths and legends that they said the sun never set for 5 days. So it's possible that it's but I mean, like, how would they know how long a day was if it never set for 5 days? I don't think they had clocks, So it's suspect, but yeah. This is all the kind of interesting stuff to keep you awake at night. But it's also, the interesting thing was the thing that I raised actually in the manifesto, and that's that it's unlikely to be exactly 180 degree flip. So the Antarctica has clearly, although the ice has been there for a long time, it hasn't been there for millions of years. It's in at least one flip, it got to a tropical environment where you can see all the tropical fossils and stuff. So yeah, it's the actual. You see, I've always thought that the actual flipping is, you need supercomputers to model it. But I was thinking today that maybe I should be challenged on that thought and think maybe you can do modeling on a small scale, and what you do, you change various parameters, and see how robust the model is. But you might, if you do enough modeling on a computer, I think you could, even on like a laptop, you might be able to come up with, kind of areas that always in all scenarios look promising. I mean, they're the ones that I told you before, like the California coast. They wrote all of those things I've told you before. You don't want to be. America is not looking good, and basically they named all the same sort of things as I do. But yeah, anyway, amazing stuff. But anyway, unless anybody got any more on that, then I think we should go on to the next topic. And the next topic is the dreaded paragraph about accelerationism. So I got the impression that not everybody read it, and then they said one or two people read it, and then they thought like, "Oh shit, what is this? What you were saying?" I said, "Yeah, that's what I've been saying for a long time. I don't think anybody heard me." But what I was saying before, just to repeat myself this morning, was see that one of the goals of of this manifesto was to get all the logic straight, so that there weren't any contradictions. And that's, we must make sure that there are no contradictions in what we're doing, otherwise you just lose credibility. So that people have been pointing out and DMing me and stuff and saying, there are contradictions in my story, and because not everything hangs together. Like, if there's going to be a flippening, why do lone wolves? All of that kind of thing. And so it's like, okay, if there's going to be a flippening, then why do green tech and stuff? You might as well burn fossil use. So it's like yeah, you're right. So anyway, I thought I got all the ducks straight in the manifesto, but it could definitely do with a few more passes. Maybe in essence, might be like root canal therapy for people. Maybe it might be worth doing a read of it and going through paragraph by paragraph. I don't know if anybody would stomach that or think it's necessary, but yeah, I would like people to just, think through all the thing. So where I got to, and the reason why I put the acceleration thing in is because I feel that to keep everything in line, inexorably, you wind up at a point of accelerationism. You just can't avoid it. And I was saying this morning, there are two sides. There's us, which are team human, and then the transhumanists want to control everything and geoengineer everything. And they inexorably, if they're managing everything down to the human genome and the weather and every little aspect, they're micromanaging everything. It leads them inexorably on a path towards eugenics. They can't avoid it. So if you live in the utopian, techno-utopian world, it is a eugenics world. It's brave new world, right? You can't escape it. But likewise, all the tree huggers and us, we don't get a free pass either. Because if we say this machine is terminal, then we have to face the fact that anything we can do to terminate it sooner is better for the environment and everybody that survives. So we have a nasty consequentialist argument because I've been accused a number of times of being, eco-fascist genocidal, because basically people are saying if you are an accelerationist, if you did say 500 lone wolves or something like that, say like people are going to die, and I say yeah, but a lot more people are going to die if you do nothing. And every day you wait, 220,000 people are added to this planet, net births, right? Net increase in the population is 220,000 every single day that the machine runs. 40 gigatons of CO2 go up into the atmosphere. Thousands of hectares of deforestation. The sea is on its last legs. The pH goes up every day. The sea's plundered. So things are getting worse every day. There's a nasty bit of research. There's some psychologists did some research that showed that people have logical inconsistency in their thinking. So let me think how it goes. If you ask them, would it be better if, say, say 7 billion people died? Would that be worse than everybody dies? And everybody's, I think like 70% of people say, no, 7 billion people are worse than everybody. And they say, why? And it's something to do with the cognitive. As people think 7 billion people dying is awful. That's just a statistic, but it's enough that it triggers their mammalian brain and they can imagine 7 million people dying. Extinction, people kind of can't imagine it. So they discount extinction, even though that's illogical. If you worry about human life and you want people to survive so much that you don't want 7 billion people, then surely you don't want 7.8 billion people to die. It's 7.8 billion people is worse than 7 billion people dying. But people can't make that connection. So it's exquisitely complicated because it means that the accelerationist argument is you say, people will say, I'm not doing that. People are going to die. And you say, yeah, but if you don't, a lot more people are going to die.
Right.
Like, I don't care. It's like, no. And so what this field is, but, just hang on one second. So what this field is, it's a well-known field in psychology and ethics. It's called trolleyology. Does everybody know about trolleyology? So trolleyology is a field in psychology, and it came from this ethical dilemma of, if you have a train track, the original trolley problem was what it was called, was if you have a train track and you have, like 10 people on the track, right? then you can actually turn the points. You have the ability to turn the points. You throw the points, and then you can get to sidetrack the train and miss the 10 people, but then you're going to kill 3 or 1 or whatever. And it's, do you pull it? And then and so that was the original thing. But since then, they've taken it all around the world, and they find that like French people say like, no, you mustn't let I can't remember. The French, I think, are fatalists. They say, no, you mustn't intervene. You just let fate take its course. No, maybe that's Germans. The Germans are heavily biased towards, no, you don't touch the thing. You don't intervene. You let fate take its course as if you're not there. And the French, I think, are very, very biased towards like, fucking hell, man, just throw the thing, save the 10 guys, hit the 1 guy. And then it all has various permutations. They found out that if they switch it, so it means most people will actually throw the points to actually sidetrack the train. Right? But then psychologists said, hey, we made this amazing finding. If you substitute a fat guy, you say, would you push a fat guy in front of the train to save the 10 guys? So it's exactly the same problem. They just substituted pushing and a fat guy. And then suddenly it drops dramatically. People will throw the points and have a killer guy, but to push a fat guy, suddenly then it flips again. Like 80% of people say, no, I would never. And so psychologists wonder about it, and it's easy to explain. It's just, if you have the 5 brain layer theory, it's pretty easy. It's like, first of all, it's a thought experiment. So it's in your alien cortex. So most people do the thought experiment and they're consequentialist. Your alien cortex is consequentialist. So it can do the maths, say I'd rather save 10 and, sacrifice 1 and stuff. And so, but you see, what they don't have an answer for why the fat guy problem. And the reason is because then it's in your mammalian brain. You see, a fat guy's is somebody that's vulnerable. It basically is a victim, and your mammalian brain is telling you, the outsiders, like that need to be protected, and so then your mammalian brain is making the decision. So that since they don't know the 5-layered brain-layered model, they're completely confused. But if you know that, you can just see who's making the decision, which layer in the brain. But anyway, this is straight up trolleyology. It's also, actually, I mentioned this in the manifesto. It's also a lifeboat's ethics, right? So it's parachute debate. Basically, if there are too many people in the lifeboat, you haven't got enough food to save everybody before you make landfall. If you share the food out evenly, then everyone will die. So if you just, do you feed some people and let the others out? What do you do? So it is a straight up of that class of parachute debates and ethical things, and it's well studied, in fact. But anyway, we have to agree as the Extinctionati about what we think about acceleration. And in many respects, it's to say it's a variation of trolleyology, because it's saying, look, if you accelerate things, you might save a few. If you do nothing, it's total extinction.
Yeah, but you're not going to save animals and plants much there, because if you're going to talk to DGR and you tell them that you're going to encourage the oil industry to burn more oil or to drill more mines and things like that, we're going to get in I don't want to go too much in the controversy there, because we've talked about it before, but we want a habitat, we want some food. No,
but you see, here's the logic. You're not using correct logic. Look, if we all agree, everybody agrees the oil's not going to stay in the ground, right? So you're arguing for a point that we've already given up, right? So the oil's never going to stay in the ground. So then it's better that use it up quick. You get the show over with. The longer you string it out, the more problematic it is. you see, that it's not an option to say, oh, we don't want to accelerate the fuel burn because that's going to affect the animals. The fuel's going to burn. There's nobody that doesn't think there's unless they crackpots think that the oil's going to stay in the ground. I mean, people say we've got to keep the oil in the ground, but I mean, who believes that? Anybody believes that we ain't going to burn the last bit of energy anyway? How could you not? It's like, if you live in a northern climate, if you live in Russia or in England or something like that, I mean, seriously, you're going to sit there in the freezing cold without burning a lump of coal or peat? It's like, you're not going to do it, man. You're going to do that for one night. And the very next night, you're going to go, screw the environment. I need some freaking boiler, and I need some gas, and I need some heating, and screw this. We'll worry about it tomorrow. You're going to burn it. It's like having a starving person have a steak, a big juicy steak next to them, and say like, no, they're not going to touch it. Yeah, for a while, but they're going to eat it, man. People are in fantasy land if they think that we're going to transition off that oil. Well, if you transition off that oil, you just make it cheaper for India and Africa and stuff, and they'll say, "Thank you very much. You made the oil cheaper, and we're going to burn it faster." It's like not getting anywhere. So in no scenario does the oil stay in the ground. It's basically we're in overshoot, and using up the oil is part of drawdown. So it's like.
I was just going to comment that from a personal point of view, I find myself kind of sacrificing, like you were saying. It's not a big sacrifice, but okay, turn the lights off, don't use too much heating, don't travel so much, don't have a car, don't fly. So all of these restrictions on myself, in a way, it's going to be a relief for me because I'm going to go, well, it's going to be used anyway, so I might as well use it. But where does it cross the line of being, like, is it hedonistic? Is that the word? Or just kind of callously wasting things? But I watched the video of one of you talking to, I think it was Tom, and how he was saying about comparing one's life to those of one's peers or friends. My friends travel a lot. They go to Paris, they go here. And part of me condemns them. But at the same time, I wish I could do the same thing. So it crosses that line of, like strictures we place on ourselves. And yeah, I guess that's just where I'm just analyzing.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow the logic through, it means all restrictions are off. It means you can fly, you can get a gas guzzler, you can live like
I'm gonna get a Hummer next week.
You can live abundantly. He says, this guy's a multimillionaire, right? He says, like, I don't understand all these people on the left and all the austerity and their measly mouths, little things. I say live abundantly. I think everybody should live abundantly. And he doesn't know why people want to kill him.
But on a Rumspringer, wasn't that what you said?
Yeah, but Rumspringer. So okay, that it's interesting to look at it from a psychological point of view. So it's kind of like dieting and binge dieting. And so what people are doing now with, flight shaming and, virtue signaling and stuff, it's austerity, right? And I don't think it has much future, right? I mean, I don't think that in the same way as like dieting goes in fads, but, people can only do, most people can only do austerity and self-denial in the face of everybody else having a good time for so long. At some point, everybody cracks, and then they probably make up for all the lost years with a big Rumspringer.
Yeah, but what is really having a good time? Because the definition of having a good time varies enormously from a human to another. Like, I am a total recluse who doesn't like traveling and who stays I'm happy that way. I'm not making an effort to be austere. I'm not forcing myself not to fly. For some people, it's a way of living. Also, it's a kind of a protection of your freedom in case the austerity is forced on you by the machine in these times where some privileged people are probably going to be able to get some fuel for heating and some food, and some people are not going to get it. So the more independent you are from all these things, the better you are, like you with your water on your boat. And like everybody kind of, we've been talking about that as a training for future times. So it all depends. We all have definitions of what is a good life. Is flying around the planet a good life? For some people, I probably understand it is, but for some people it may be not. And for some people, being in a very hot house with all the lights on is making them feel good. Some people, it's just they don't need it.
Yeah. So okay. So we kind of talked about this before. I mean, I wouldn't change my life in the slightest, and I live quite an austere life. But I think to actually get to that life, I don't think you can do it from self-denial, right? I don't think it's practice. See, that's what I was saying, is that people should go and live the rich life. I mean, I only got to it because I exhausted the rich life. I mean, I didn't get super rich, but I was amazed at how you only need like 5 million in the bank, and you're already in a different class where they roll out the red carpet for you, and you don't pay for shit, and you have like celebrity status, and just the thing that you can do whatever you want. Money's not a restriction. So like 80%, 90% of people, just money is the stumbling block for everything they do. And they dream about being rich and say, you don't have any problems, you're rich and stuff. Because the major problem is, for debt slaves is they keep them cash hungry. So they just dream of unlimited food. And you say, yeah, but if you've got unlimited food, you don't eat as much as you think. You probably eat less than a slave. But I don't believe you can get to the without actually experiencing the riches. So in some ways, the forbidden fruit, if you always, I mean, I don't think Extinction Rebellion's dream or the Animal Rebellion can get there by saying, we all have to deny ourselves, we all have to, cancel Christmas, we all have to be vegetarian and then, wear sackcloth and stuff. It's like, yeah, they'll do it for a little bit, but it's forbidden fruit, man. You can't. I mean, look at the Christian church. They tried to get to, the perfect Christian without any vices, and it just doesn't work. All the, it just caused blowouts. But just basically the popes and the priests and that, they were outrageous. The more in the Middle Ages, the more puritanical they got, the more you had this, corresponding hedonistic blowout on the other side. And, it's the same in England, where the battle between the Roundheads and the Cavaliers. So the Roundheads were all austere and kind of like Extinction Rebellion and kind of Mickey Mouse. And the Cavaliers were like my mates, who was just like, well, life's for living, drink up, tomorrow we die and stuff. And they was like, oh no, life's is for suffering, and think of your eternal soul in heaven. And that was the Puritans. And like, people can do Puritanism for so long, and then they just say like, oh fuck this, man. Like, live a little. And so kind of whatever gains you make are given up in the splurge. I don't think you can get there by an effort of will. You have to get there by a process of exhaustion. You have to work through it. You can't just deny yourself. Okay.
Yeah, I think you don't have to do these things for the wrong reasons. And you don't have, I think as you said, there's a lot of Puritan Christian guilt that's suffusing all this kind of ethics. And that's definitely not the reason why I'm where I am, or maybe some other people are. But on the other hand, what you say makes sense if we are, for example, wanting to achieve a certain goal in activism. Why would we not use everything that we have at our disposal and not go, I don't know, go not take a horse and a cart if we can take a car to go somewhere. It's just, yeah, I get what you say, but I'm also very conscious of the heritage that all of us on this call. I mean, we're all kind of Oh yeah, but you know, and you know, it's,
I mean, I'm not going to change my life one bit, but all I'm saying is we advocate that you can do whatever you want. And so here I would go out on a limb and predict this is if everybody said, you know, like, oh, we screwed, you know, you can do what you want. It doesn't make any difference now. I predict that most people would think that, oh, everybody will go nuts and have a party and stuff. And it's like, well, we're talking years here. You can't party for 5 years. I think what would happen very quickly is more people would stop flying and they would actually live a much greener life if they really looked it in the face. You know, if you said, yeah, it's we're in hospice now, go nuts, doesn't matter what you do, and suddenly they'll lose their appetite for it. You see, somewhere built into flying and all these things, it's like Coke. People are not tasting the Coke or drinking it because they want to drink Coke. It's an idea that's packaged and sold to you by the media, and it's all, you know, sold to your reptilian brain, and every Coke looks, you know, that shape is actually patented. It's patented to look like a woman's figure. They actually have the exact dimensions of the average woman's figure, and all of these things. It's basically made to be sexual. I don't know. The Coke ads are not so erotic in America anymore, but here in Greece, they're all suggestive. You know, it's basically you know, a young girl with a Coke bottle in her mouth, and it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, man, just just spell it out. You know, it's like with their legs open and the Coke. Jesus, wept, man. Like, they're not even subtle. But you see, that's, and everybody goes, oh yeah, Coke, and it evokes all these memories and stuff, and they've indoctrinated us this way. But if you said, like, okay, this is the end times, it's like, you know, Coke's shit, it's bad for you, and the whole ethos falls down. It's like, you know, you would have your last Coke thinking, you know, I used to think I was having a bit of Americana in my hand, and you know, it would remind me, and now you go like, well, that's all over. You would never drink another Coke in your life. I mean, how can you do that kind of advertising if everybody lost hope, right? And that applies across the board, right?
Yeah, I think many people just justify the flying thing because they're making sacrifices in other parts of their life, particularly in Britain now. We're endlessly told that, you know, if you get an electric car or you do other things in your life, like to be as green as possible, then it's all good, it's all rosy. You can still go and do that one flight a year or something else, and they feel like, well, I've done my bit here in this section of my life, so I can go and do that other thing, and then it's fine, you know. But what winds me up, I just say now, you know, I've just bought another car, and it is a diesel, and it, you know, and a guy at work says to me, oh, like, that's a real gas guzzler, you're going to be a road hog. And I'm like, I've had the same car since 2013. It was probably about the most environmentally friendly petrol car I could have had. That cost like 30 quid a year to tax. It was pathetic. It was like a 1.2 litre Kia, like absolutely no power to it at all. I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to get a decent secondhand car that's comfortable for long journeys. I don't care. And my other Norwegian colleague pointed out to him, he said, well, you know that during the pandemic, actually, Ryanair kept all their slots at the airport, you know, the terminals, and they kept ghost flights going. One of those ghost flights would emit more CO2 than that Audi A7 that I've gone and bought, you know, that's diesel, that's a V6 4.2 litre, you know, in, you know, its whole lifetime. Probably that one flight would, you know, emit more. And that's the thing that people miss. It's that bunker fuel that's going around, that's, you know, that's heavily dirty, thick, tarry fuel that fills all these shipping containers that are whizzing all over the world. That is a huge problem compared to me with my one car. Obviously, everybody with their own car, but we need everybody to stop driving. Like, it's not going to make a difference. And even then, you know,
but they're never gonna. You know, if everybody in Britain stopped everybody, it just makes room for everybody in Africa and India and in China. So, in China, they have half the standard of living in America. And Xi Jinping is dedicated to achieving or beating per capita standard of living of an American. It's like, well, that's the game is over right there. The world cannot
and the
support
more
America's
cars.
standard of living, and you're going to add 4 times the size of America before 2030. It's like we're toast.
And all your old polluting cars are going in containers to Nigeria and Ghana, being reconditioned to be on the African roads. But they've got a huge industry with whatever, our clothes, our cars, our washing machines, and everything is going over there because they want to achieve the standards of living that the West has shown them. And we're not going to stop this by being virtuous, because the machine is working like this, it's
Isn't there also, I don't know if it's called the Jevons paradox, but some studies have shown that people who buy, for instance, electric or hybrid vehicles, they say, oh, I use so little gasoline now, but they end up traveling more miles. So in the end, they use the same, quantity of gasoline. So, yeah.
Yeah, or more. Or
Yeah,
more,
or more,
because
yeah,
if
because they
if it's fuel
justify.
efficient, you'd get more of them, right? You'd drive more if you could, if you weren't restrained. But yeah, but for all these things, but the thing that Tom was talking about, they did a survey recently. I think people saw it. We posted it, I think, on ExxonMed. But it was like, in a survey, I think in Britain, where is it like 70%, maybe in the whole of Europe, in fact, 70% of people think they're doing enough for the environment, because they've done like one thing, they've given up plastic straws or something, and then they think, okay, I've done my bit, now I can carry on living. And they say that people are not anywhere close to what is sustainable, but they've already think that they've done enough. So
Yeah,
they
it's
haven't
kind.
even started
It's kind
restricting
of
their
a.
carbon footprint, and they already think they've done too much.
It's kind of a mental accounting that's not really complete. Like I know a woman who says she's vegan, so she can, and she doesn't have a car, so she can fly several times for vacations. But so just to follow up on the accelerationism of our extinctionati group, what I'm getting is that stop with the self-denial and whatever you do it because it's what's meaningful to you that you've found, like Sophie said, this is the way I've discovered, or even you, that um, material things did not give me too much pleasure after I've tried them, all. So stop with the self-denial, live your fullest life, and don't feel guilty about using resources that you need to use. Or are we advocating that no, go whole hog and use even more than you think you need to use?
So for everybody, you just advocate that, say there are no rules. It's like, be austere if you want, go and buy a green car. That works. If you take pollution out of the air, if everybody drove an EV, that the global dimming would end, all the phosphates would fall out of it. That would add 0.6 to about 1 degree. So that's great. That'll melt the. So it's great. Go for it. If you're green, then that's good. McPherson paradox, hooray! And that melts the ice. If you conservative and you want to, have a big SUV and burn up the planet, it's great too. That accelerates the ice. It's all bringing it closer. You can do whatever you want. There are no rules. We're in the hospice. You can do anything you want. But from our point of view, we have an agenda. Now, the extinction art is about survival. We want life to survive. I mean, there's not many humans are going to survive this for sure. But we want at least some to survive. We want us to survive. First of all, we want members of the Extinctionati to survive, because this is our Causa Sui project. This is denial of death is Extinctionati, you want to go down fighting, and this is our vehicle to go down fighting and survive. So first of all, you want us, members of the Extinctionati, to survive. But barring the survival of us, it's like you want somebody, even doesn't matter if they're psychopaths or rich or if they're Elon Musk, or it doesn't matter. You want somebody rather than nobody. Obviously, we'd prefer like the Pirahar to survive, or some guys, but also because they're viable. I don't think these other guys are viable, but you'd say like anybody, after us, anybody. And then you said, but implicit in all of that is all the life on the planet. Nobody is going to survive without an intact habitat, and the whole of Earth's habitat is so degraded now. So I was interested in that Russian thing where they said about 500 million, that kind of deal. That's what they expect to squeak through, and I've heard that over and over again. So I've always assumed like 500 million, all the seats on the table. This is after the after the flipping. So after that comes the real struggle, and that's the volcanic winter. So it was basically 500 million have to survive the volcanic winter. Now that's going to be a struggle, because about 1 million people have squeaked through in the Younger Dryas. But that was a fully intact. You're talking, there were megafauna. There's not a single museum in any town in Russia that doesn't have a mammoth in it. There were herds and herds of mammoths, going all over Russia, just this vast area. I mean, this place was just teeming with wildlife. The seas were so full of fish. And the first guys that came up the Hudson Bay talk about it's so full of whales you can virtually walk across the Hudson Bay. There was so much cod in the Atlantic up until the 1950s that they thought it was unlimited. They did calculations of the amount of protein in that cod. It was like more than humanity could eat in the next 10 centuries. And then suddenly in a few decades, it was all gone. So it's so you're thinking of that Earth and all that abundance, like that crowd of Noah and his descendants, they had a fully intact environment, and like only 1 million, they were decimated to humanity barely squeaked through. So if you think like 7.8 billion people and surviving on nothing, it's you got to kind of imagine.
Don't forget that 7 billion people depend on 90% of of animals that are domesticated, chickens and cows.
All of those are gone. Right?
Yeah, but that's what we'll be left with, because in the wild,
90% of the animals now by biomass, or 90% of the mammals by biomass are us and domestic animals. So those domestic animals are gone, right? So they a lot in South America and on the Pampas and stuff like that, but in America they're in CAFOs. Those animals don't survive. I don't think you can, after the flipping, I can't imagine those things become feral and wander around and stuff. Those things are very likely to die right in their capos with all their feed in the silos. There's not enough water for these things. Okay, the land is fenced and stuff. You can't just, if you left the cows, they would get into the next pasture. They would graze it to nothing and starve to death. Because the domestic animals are not going to survive. Vast majority of them are chickens in cages. I do not see, at some time during the flipping, some, Brad Pitt character out of 12 Monkeys will go around freeing all the chickens out of their cages. They're going to die, within hours, because they're not going to get their feed and water. See, all these CAFOs are managed. Nobody thinks this through, but all these CAFOs and they're automated, right? They even in Europe and stuff, even the milking is done by machines. So so they watered by machines and pumps and computers and stuff. If the grid goes down for longer than 72 hours, there's not a single cow, pig, chicken, or anything left, because they're fed by water pump, by electric pump. So nobody tells people all of this stuff, and everybody thinks, no, we are hugely resilient, and we're hanging on a thread.
Yeah, and even like shepherds who have sheep that they go and look after. When there's a heavy snowstorm up north, they lose. They have lost a lot of like sort of half a herd or a third of the herd before, and that's just in normal times now when you might have a bad weather event, and that's without all of the machinery that you're talking about, that side of the manufacturing, managed farm livestock market.
Yeah, so you can see it already. They culled a lot of animals in the UK because they couldn't get them to market. It's like the shelves are empty. Everybody wanted meat, and they're culling all the animals. Why? Because the supply chain broke down. So they can't get feed.
For the
They can't get
CO2.
feed.
Yeah,
they can't get feed, and they can't take the cow to the slaughterhouse, and they can't package it, and they can't put it in the supermarket because everybody's got COVID. So the end result is that they have to cull these things, and so the same applies. It's like if if you look at the year without a summer, in the year without a summer, all the animals got eaten, even the ones in the zoo, because they couldn't feed them. If you can't feed your cow or horse oats and stuff like that, then you have to kill it and eat it. And that's what they did. But then the meat's over, and it was like, yeah, then you're in trouble.
There's a really interesting anecdote. I was listening to it was a heck of a book. It was When Money Dies. It was an absolute tomb of a book. So I'm glad I listened to the audio version of it. But there was some really good anecdotes in there in the 20s. I mean, it was the whole period. It covered, right from sort of all the way through the Weimar hyperinflation, and they were talking about when you had sort of marauding people that came from the towns and cities who, I don't want to say marauding, but there was anecdotes of farmers in areas, and they'd been out to Sunday church and they were coming back, and then they saw all these people who had just been to their barn and they just ransacked the place and gutted the pig. And it was almost like a revenge attack because they didn't have anything. And there was a period where the farmers had enormous power because they were stopping things going to market due to the economics of it. It was more beneficial for the farmers to keep hold of their livestock but it was a really good illustration of how you just don't know what's going to happen and what consequences it could cause. So of course this farmer, they were left almost destitute because people had just almost out of spite, they'd come in and just ransacked the place, gutted this pig. It left absolutely just, brutal scene of like farm animals just literally just butchered, just willy-nilly, purely out of spite for the farmers who were sort of almost holding the city folk to ransom.
Yeah, and the reverse applies too. So if you look at in the Stalin with the kulaks, he deliberately starved them. So he killed about 40 million deliberately, and by starvation, by doing the opposite, keeping the food away from the rich peasant, the landowning peasant.
Well, that seems to introduce quite well the very important thing that you're talking about is survival, because we've been talking about that a lot, like what are we going to do, how are we going to feed ourselves and stuff. And at the end of in the manifesto, actually, there's mention of that, but we will have to go a bit more into details about things like that, because whatever is the scenario awaiting us, if we depend on 90% of domesticated animals and a degraded vegetal habitat, we're going to have to talk about all these things, and volcanic winter, and what do you do, and how do you survive, and all these interesting subjects.
Yeah, and they come in various phases, and like we said, the next one is fiscal crisis. It looks like and then war can't be far off. But the four horsemen are riding in rapidly. But The banner theme though is the fact that the environment is so degraded, there's so little left, that any survivors are going to struggle. So it's getting marginal every day that goes by. It's even more marginal, and so the sooner the flippening comes, anything to stop the machine. I think the only thing that's going to stop it is the flippening, or like a comet. I can't see anything else. I mean, other than its intrinsic failure. So it basically does an endemic failure from endogenous forces, all its internal forces. But if it does an endogenous failure, it's going, that's the worst scenario of all, because you see, if you imagine, hordes of starving people going mad, that is the classic drawdown scenario which Sid Smith talks about, where all the bunnies in the field die. If you saw that lecture, Sid Smith did this lecture, was rather good, about drawdown. He said, and it was a thing for for ecologists and his students, and he did this lecture. And so most people think, you have predator-prey cycles, and if the bunnies overshoot, then they eat all the plants, and bunnies die back, the plants come back. And he says no, that all the bunnies in the field die because in overshoot they start eating the roots away, and nothing grows back. And so that that's kind of where we are. It's kind of a metaphor for what people will do on a grand scale. So you imagine that, okay, look at Africa. A lot of Africa's being, the last remnants of game in Africa are being held together because of, poachers are held at bay by game wardens and fences and strict laws. But if the state collapses, like in Nairobi and like South Africa, and it's hanging on by a thread, by the way, all those guys have been just dying to go and get some bushmeat. They're hungry. And so the first thing they do is they've got AK-47s. They're just going to take out anything that moves. The Serengeti, if it moves, they'll eat it. So in the collapse of the state, if people are going to take every last bit, like those bunny rabbits, and then then the flippening comes. Then there's no hope. There's like, what refugium will you find that still has a viable habitat that can support people? It's like they will have gobbled it all up in the collapse of global industrial civilization. It's a pretty dark subject, isn't it? But like,
I wanted to bring up I don't know if you want to stick on this. I was thinking about this child thing, having kids. I think you said Reza had a question about that as well. I know we were going to do a conversation, but I thought I'd bring it up because, I mean, I'm in a bit of a conundrum because I think, for a long time I wasn't sure, and I was probably a bit of a disciple of McPherson and thought, well, what's the point? And I'm glad to say that you changed my thinking on that, because obviously, I mean, I don't think we should necessarily try and control that outcome as long as, we aren't attached for it. I remember we did talk about it with Gary, and I think it was probably back in 2020, was it? It was ages ago. But I feel like, that it's, as you said, someone has to survive, and it makes sense. I think you said it's neutral. I kind of feel like, if you have a child, as long as you're not attached to the outcome, but it's conflicted as well, because, if you say, well, I can't bear to bring the child into this world, well, that's the alien cortex talking, isn't it? And that's almost trying to control another outcome. It's such a it is just such a
you see, but people are caught in the death of the system, and their ego and identification is with the death of the system. So they're extrapolating that forward to their life and stuff, and they're not thinking clearly, because, you know, if you have a kid, that kid, for starters, if they grow up, kids grow up in the environment that they grow up in, and if that's all they know, that's all they kind of want in a way. They, you know, they don't have your expectations, they have the expectations of the circumstance, and that's kind of part of the human adaptability. Is like, you know, if you were born into a box, you would be happy in a box. And so if they're born into adversity, they could actually have a much better life than you had. You see, you're attached to the life of the dream of the 50s. But if you don't bring them up to have that dream, it's like, yeah, they could have, you know, they could be pirates of the end times and have a short and wonderful life of adventure and love every moment of it. So it doesn't equate to actually go, you know, the death of your ego and civilization doesn't necessarily have to be projected on them. See, what I think is a mistake is if you know, what people are doing now, they're having kids blind and without any foresight. And they're thinking their kids are going to grow up and have a baby boomer life and retire sometime in their 90s. And, you know, lifespans are getting longer, and maybe Elon Musk and Bill Gates will have had some other technology and people might live to 150 years old, you know, by the time my kid grows up. Anyway, I'm going to make sure they go to college and do this. Like, you're in fantasy land, man. It's like your kid's not going to make college before, and even if they did, it's like, why are you even sending them? The skills they're learning are useless in this world that we're rapidly entering. So those people, that's wrong. What those people are doing is wrong because they're deluded. But if you know what's coming and you say, like, okay, I know the parameters of what I'm doing, that's an entirely different animal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. I agree completely. I guess it's just the hardest thing is the idea of, because I loathe the state and the idea of that whole thing of, like, almost, yeah, you have to register a child and, you know, dock them at the, you know, into the slave system, as it were. So in that respect, I find that, I mean, there was actually, there was a case, there was a guy who went to court. I mean, that was a bit different because I think they were already on the state's watch list for another child, you know. So they were, the state were already onto them. But he went to the High Court and argued that he believed that his son would be being docked onto a slave ship into the legal system, and so into our way of life. And he lost the case, but it kind of demonstrated that point about how. But then again, that is also trying to control things. But I suppose, as you say, if you can, try and just let them be, and they'll have a great time. But as long as they're just, like, maybe not at some horrible school or something. That's the other problem. Is, if you can do it that way, it's so difficult.
Yeah, it's kind of like that movie, I think, the Life is Beautiful movie that everybody hated. And although whatever his name is, I can never remember his name, Bertolucci, whatever, he got all the Oscars and stuff for that, and everybody said, no, that's terrible because you can't, you mustn't, that's not politically correct way to look at Auschwitz. And so, but think of that movie. I mean, it's just imaginary, but it's a thought experiment. That, imagine if you say, if you knew that you were going into that movie in Auschwitz, and that guy had the option to say, like, okay, we'll run 2 movies for you. There's the Life is Beautiful movie. You can do that with a kid, or you can go in without a kid and have some, I don't know, Danish movie where everybody he just gets through the thing and then slits his wrist or something. I don't know, Schindler's List or something. And then you ask him to decide. Of course, he would take the Life is Beautiful movie because it's so much better to do it with the son. So I'm just saying that we project all these things. That as long as you go in it with your eyes open, I think that's that's fine, according to me. But
it makes me think about. I'm often thinking about the worst outcome kind of. Well, the way it's portrayed in that film, was it The Road? There was a book of it as well, wasn't there? And she has the child like after the collapse. You don't know what's happened. There's been some event, and then it was Charlize Theron that was in the film, and then the dad is with the little boy like years later, but the mum just can't take it, so she like tops herself. And then he's like they're left like trying to like roam around the landscape, a bit like Threads. And they find like a bunker full of like tinned food, and there's like all these marauding hordes of people who are basically who've turned into cannibals, and it's just so dark. It's like, but it's a kind of, I don't know. That's like at the despair end. But I think it personally would be, as you say, it would be much more fun for a child in because they haven't known anything different, and it could be exciting and extraordinary. I remember you said that you had that anecdote about when there was a storm or something and your kids were loving it, and the roof nearly came off or something. I don't know. I remember you telling that story.
Yeah, next door. Luckily, it wasn't our roof. It actually came down on the guys next door, but a whole tree came right through their roof. And that sense of adventure and stuff is more important than trying to think, will they have a good life or not. It's like, it's kind of not your decision to make. See, this is the problem with getting so alien cortex, that we've got so alien cortex that you have to make all these infernal decisions which shouldn't be laid on us. All of these things should be out of our hands. Whether you have kids or not, you shouldn't have control of that. I mean, now we have the pill and we have control and stuff, and it's like, what has it done for us? It's made us all miserable because now we have to make these horrible choices. It's like, what's happening with pets in America now is all this, the fabulous, expensive $1 million equipment that they have to keep dead people alive indefinitely. 30% of all the people in the healthcare system are in end of life care. That means they're dead ineffectively, but they're just keeping them alive to drain money out of them. And so all the technology to do that actually filters down even to pets. So now I guess it's the same in the UK, but now you have to get pet insurance for like your health insurance, because like the family dog gets to like 14. This thing, I had this with 2 dogs in my family. It's like this dog is 14 years old, man. It's like lived a couple of years past what it's supposed to, and then it's got cancer. And then you see, they don't say like, oh, okay, the dog's had it. You say like, okay, we'll send them to a farm upstate. What they tell you is, in front of the kids and everything, they say, well, it's got cancer. And we can do this, we can operate, but it's like 10 grand and something. And so like, I'm left with this decision. It's like, oh, fuck it. I have to pay 10 grand. I mean, this is the member of the family, sure, but I don't want to have this choice. I'd rather the dog's got old, and if you didn't have all this equipment, it would die. But now you have this equipment. Now you lay 10 grand on me and a shitty decision. I mean, how do I come out? If I don't pay the 10 grand, and they know it, they're using it, and that's why they tell you in front of the kids. And they say in front, and then, so that, like, if I don't pay the 10 grand, then my family thinks I'm a fucking dog killer. And so it's like, you fucking bastards. And so you pay over 10 grand and the dog lived for 6 months, and you think, you fucks. But this is what they're doing. And so you don't want these decisions, right?
Yeah, that kind of neatly segues onto my next point, which is, I don't know, it's pretty personal. But anyway, I'll go there. So I mean, the thing is, obviously it takes 2 to make a child. And she's 1 year older than me.
Not anymore. So you're behind the times. It only takes 1.
Oh, well, yeah.
Or 3. There's some kids with 3 parents now. You can have a mitochondrial donor if you want.
Oh God, let's not go there. Anyway, the point was, she's running out of time basically, and she already, because she spent 10 years trying to find someone, and that was just an absolute horror show trying to date in London. She actually did go to a fertility clinic to find out if she could freeze her eggs, and of course that they just put her through the ringer. I think it was mainly because the doctor was pretty insensitive. He wasn't very good, but they told her, like, your chances aren't good, basically. So after all that, which cost an awful lot of money, I can't remember how much, she was left just absolutely feeling even worse. You know, like, I can't find anyone. And then obviously younger brothers and sisters who are having kids or have had kids meets me. But yeah, that puts me in, like, yeah, she really wants to have kids, but I kind of feel like, yeah, that's fine. I'm you know, game for it. But then it's like, I worry that she'll want to go for fertility treatment, and you think, well, that's another control aspect, and that's another thing. It's like, and people spend, I mean, I think that, and it is on the NHS up to the point, is that, oh no, it's not, sorry, no, you do have to pay, don't you? And that is just like, that people, yeah, I mean, now obviously with the jab and everything, they're bringing in new rules on, yeah, like partners. And I think there was a recent thing I heard last week about that they've been, I think it's in Ireland, is it, or in Scotland, they're changing Scotland, I think. They've already started, you know, giving these kind of hints that if one side of the party isn't taking the poke, then you know, there could be problems, and you know, might not get offered fertility treatment, blah blah blah, you know. So anyway, just it's more, as you say, more decisions, more control. I think if it got to that point, then probably I'd be like, I don't think we should.
Would this work? You see, the thing that I'm saying is we need to get all these intermediaries out of our life, mediating all these natural processes and stuff, like everything from the dog's death to whether we have kids or not. And we need to get the state and intermediaries and the monetary system and the hospitals and doctors and all these third parties out of our lives. So could you sell that to your partner and say that, like, yeah, you know, but let's just take fate, you know. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But you know, you're not going to pursue it or spend money and get third parties involved and stuff like that.
This is exactly what I was coming along to the line of thinking now. And I think, yeah, we haven't actually sort of got to that, because I think we're going to see what happens, and then, but if she wants to go that route, I might at that point say I think I have reservations, because and I think also she this is why she has already been so nervous, because she's pretty much been very pessimistic that it's unlikely. And yeah, so yeah. But it's but so yeah, that kind of probably takes it out anyway. But that's exactly it. It's that dichotomy, and it's like, yeah, I don't want this control mechanism coming in, this third party. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody must get more in tune with letting the fates take their course. I mean, that was the original meaning of fatalistic, is you just say, well, it's not up to me, it's up to the fates. You know, now it's kind of derogatory, but you know, everybody should be more fatalistic. Just so, like, yes, like, do we have to make all these fucking decisions? I mean, look what it's done to us. It's like, it's served women so badly. There's so many women, especially in America, that's you know, the clock's ticking on them, and they've been told all this thing that they must be their own woman and earn their independence and stuff, and all this feminist agenda. And then they all wind up hitting 40 and thinking, oh my God, I'm in a panic, I can't find a Mr. Right, and they're having their eggs frozen, and while they have a juggle a career, it's all turning to shit. But it was all supposed to be, you know, equality and this wonderful future of determinism, and it's all turned south on us. And so it was like, you know, it's a tragedy that we need to, you know, I mean, we're heading further and further down this road, so rather than heading back to sanity. And so we're heading to the point where we actually control the weather and stuff, which is getting really mad. But
do you remember the beginning of that movie Idiocracy? Where do you remember that movie where there's that couple and you can see them, you know, postponing first because they haven't finished their studies, then postponing the child because they're having their career, and then the next view is the woman on her own because he's died, and she said, "But I've frozen my eggs." You know, it's just like, it's nice to revisit that funny movie, because I watched it recently again.
It was redone. That whole scene was reiterated and recapitulated in that Extinction Rebellion video with that I can't remember what her name is, but she was supposed to be the science expert. And so, because she was so career oriented in her science thing and stuff, that she was pushing the limit there. And she said, "Yeah, I had to get my eggs frozen because I haven't found Mr. Right." And I said, "Like, I'm sorry, lady, you are not going to find Mr. Right." But anyway, it was tragic. It was exactly that story. You know, there's nothing wrong with her, but you know, she's a very nice girl or something. But man, she was very off-putting for a guy, and because she just came across as so determined and masculine, and you know, she looked feminine enough, but her attitude was so militant, and so, you know, so sure of herself that, like, she's a scientist, and you know, she's got, I don't know, I can imagine her saying, you know, like, "I've got imposter syndrome, but you know, I'm working that through with a therapist," and stuff. It's like, oh, it's like, can't you see how fake all of this shit is? It's like, just wouldn't you be better off just giving up?
But I remember the conversation you had with Ryan on the subject, like Tom was saying a year or two ago on this, and it would be nice to revisit actually that meeting, because everything was kind of was said there was enlightening, because for young people who who feel that, you know, the primal feel that you want to have a child, you don't think about it, you just do it. Do you know what I mean? And it was more or less the conclusion of what you said, Hugh. There was not all this weighing and this and that and oh, maybe this. It's just you know.
But this is the big thing.
Sad,
This is the big, one of the things we're draining out of our life is serendipity. You see, if you have control of these things, then you miss it. The best things in life are by chance. The best things that are going to happen to you in life, and the worst, are chance events. And you're cutting yourself off from that by forcing the issue all the time. So if you try and direct everything, then you're only going to get what you actually achieve by trying to manage and order everything. And you cut off from the vast majority of windfalls and amazing coincidences and just the synchronicity and kairos and all of these things, the richness of life. Those all come, you know, by chance. And so, you know, if in the sailing environment, you see, you get two kinds of sailors, right? Okay, here's advice for sailors. If you're thinking of becoming a sailor in seasteading, if you're a perfectionist, you're going to be driven completely out of your mind. Anybody that's a perfectionist gets driven nuts on a boat, because a boat is chaotic. You cannot keep it ship-shape and ordered and everything on your own, and you're absolute slave to your boat. So I have the philosophy that I'm not a slave to the boat, and there's a, you know, often if things don't go wrong, I don't fix them straight away, because a lot of stuff comes right on its own, or you talk to somebody about it, and then he says like, "Oh, yeah, I have a spare one." You see, but then other guys are like, the Germans are particularly like this, and there's also an English stereotype that also does this, and they're like, as soon as something goes wrong, they go like, "Oh fuck, this is wrong, it's got to be fixed now," and then that dominates their whole life, and then they go down this path where they try and fix this, but it fucks up that, and then they have two things wrong, and they do exactly what we're doing as a species. Our global industrial civilization is doing this. They fix one thing, make two more problems, and before you know it, it starts off being a tiny little rip in a sail or something, which I would just live with. And they the next thing they know, they've lost the whole sailing season, because they send the sail off, and then basically it doesn't come back, and then that leads to this, and that's some fuck up there, and then you talk to you say like, "Tom, do you get that rip in your self-ex? Oh, and you get this long story. And I just laugh. And I said, I told you to just leave it. I have that conversation over and over again. But you see, the stuff that happens to me is like, some people come and they're all, somebody gives me a sale. Somebody said, oh, do you still need that thing for whatever broke? And I say, yeah, it's still broken. Say, oh, well, have mine. It's like, well, Tom just gave up his boat. He's going to sell it. You might as well take it off. It's not going to affect the price. All this kind of, but you completely cut off from that if you take this German attitude. It's like, yeah, it's fixed. We must get it in order. It's like nobody gives a German anything. I've never heard of a German that somebody said like, hey, I got the spare bilge pump, and it's like that never happens to Germans because, like, yeah, I ordered it on Amazon, and like, yeah, I screwed up my phone, and now I have to go to the bank, and like, fucking, you're like, you're having a nice holiday, Klaus. He says, no, it's not very nice, but I will see you for a beer as soon as I saw. Like, yeah, fuck, man. And then he shot his wife because she can't cope with it. But then, it's like, I'm amazed at what sailing can teach you that way, and this is more of that example. It's just like, but this is what everybody's been telling you. I mean, this is what Alan Watson, all these beatniks and stuff. It's like, guys, just loosen up, drop out, stop and smell the roses. It's like this. It's not that critical. Everything's a fucking crisis. Why?
Actually, in that conversation on the houseboat, he mentions the group marriage. Well, the child, the whole kind of tribal thing, that there's no nuclear family. I don't know if you've listened, all of you, to that, but that's an old 60s, 70s concept that was back again, and they elaborated on it, and gives a lot more space for thinking about children when you have a big group where everyone is your child.
Yeah, give yourself and your partner some space, man, because one of the things is, a woman's body responds to things like stress and stuff, and so if a lot of women get under stress and anxiety and stuff, and they're telling their body, this is not a good time to reproduce, and that's the signal, because the body's like getting like cortisol and stuff, and the body's saying like, it must be rough out there. It's like probably World War II the way she's carrying on. And so, she's not going to get pregnant. Then the first thing is like, oh, fucking relax, and say like, okay, completely, if you're a doctor, you can say to her, oh, you're pregnant, it's fine. You go, oh, fucking fabulous, we relax, and oh, we can go. And the first time she relaxed, then she'd get pregnant like that. See, so
actually, this is absolutely right. Because when I worked in infertility things, when I was training, there was a story. It was a story that was going around the wards. It was classic. But the moment, you've explored people, you've done all sorts of tests, actually you find out that probably in 20 to 30% of cases, you absolutely cannot find a cause. But the people will start the whole thing, get an appointment for whatever procedure is going to be used, and then the next thing, bang, the woman gets pregnant, just before the procedure, because it's
the release,
classic.
But no, I mean, I've heard stories where like people get the wrong results, and then like they're so relieved that they got pregnant and stuff, then like they say, oh, phone them up and say like, sorry, we gave you the wrong results, you're not actually pregnant, and something. They're like, and then lo and behold, they are, because they, basically the tension was off for the first time in a freaking decade. But
this is half the problem. Like a lot of the time, she's just absolutely convinced that she won't get pregnant. I have to keep telling her, like, you don't know what can happen. Like, the universe is pretty strange. Like,
no, but you're signaling your body. You're signaling your body that it's not the right time, right? So women's bodies are exquisitely sensitive to feast and famine and dangerous situations. So if it's hard times and stuff, then hunter gatherers don't normally reproduce. But then you see it happened. The baby boom was a relief boom after World War II. Everybody was so happy and enthusiastic and enjoying life and having sex normally and stuff, and that led to a whole, a population explosion. That's often what happens after wars, because, it's not simply that, oh, the guys are all off at, at the front. I mean, it's a bit of that, but it's more than compensated for when they come back from the front. Right? They make up for lost time and more, not just for the lost time. And the reason is because if you look at the winning side and the losing side, you see, like Germany, the fertility crashed after the war, and then America's the winning side, and then it booms. Well, it's it's not like, oh, all the guys were killed off in Germany. A lot more were. It's more that everybody's happy and it's all good times, and that's a signal for fertility. Even
but women don't ovulate. Women don't ovulate in stressful times. It's not just famine because they lose weight and that they're not. It's in wars and drastic situation. They stop ovulating. There's no eggs.
But even with the stock market in the go-go era in the 60s, in the dot-com boom and stuff, is women were more fertile. So there's an old thing that traders say on Wall Street, and they say you can tell the direction of the stock market by women's hemlines. What that means is that when men are making money on the stock market and they're really full of testosterone and the money's coming in and it's good times, then women's skirts get shorter and shorter because they were not even consciously, they're just trying to attract men. So basically, by the time of the go-go era, there was like mini skirts, right? And then after that, they went after the crash in like the 80s. People in the UK, they started wearing pantaloons, whatever those things are called. It's basically these horrendous skirt, trouser, dresses thing that your maiden aunt wouldn't have given you. And that was just basically the economic cycle, right?
Bears.
What, colettes? What are they called? They're called colettes or culottes. Yeah, culottes. They were dreadful bloody things. They were just basically a complete turnoff. The women were saying, basically, if you're not bringing home the bacon, you're not getting any sex. And that was the message from culottes.
Yeah, but there's much more. There's much more men and women. There's much more that's tuning up our gonads, our reproductive system than we can control. We don't know all the cues, food, provisions for safety. It's things that are subliminal, that are absolutely impossible even to explain, because they are totally, as you said, the woman's body is finely tuned to cues that you couldn't even rationally explain. They're all in the environment. It's
and epigenetics. What your bloody grandma and grandpa, whatever happened to them, if they suffered hunger or something, it's going to affect your fertility as a grandchild, because those epigenetic signals, the methylates and stuff, they're signaling you like completely different signals, saying like, okay, kids that were in the hunger winter in Holland during the war, then the grandkids of those things, then they had plenty of food, then that was a huge signal that was affected by the kids from that had those hunger winter genes in their grandparents. Yeah. So anyway, it's just like, to underline Sophie's point, is like, we come along and we think we're going to decide whether to have kids or not. It's like you're going to kid yourself. You are. It's like, so yeah. So anyway,
that is the most uncomfortable thing of all of this, is when you see all these young people that are like, it's going to be so terrible, I'm not going to have children because of the climate crisis. I'm not going to map. It's just like, so
they're not because they're under stress, they're depressed.
Yeah.
But anyway, I put a little paragraph of this in the manifesto, like, what do you tell the kids about the flipping and stuff? So have a look at that, and I addressed all these points, and so make sure we all agree on those. But I think that should be the official Extinctionati position, because if you put on the spot, you say, yeah, it's in the manifesto, man. Yeah, so read through it when you get a chance, and then just see. But
yeah, I'll see all of that. Yeah, no,
I tried to cover all these points. Yeah. Anyway, well, one of the things we discussed if we exhausted that point, then one of the things wanted to discuss about the accelerationism, and that was also included in there is taking active measures. Yeah, Gary said, look, he was surprised in this morning's meeting that I did so much operational detail, which I always say you must never put any operational detail. Everything, yeah, actually, that is one of the things to talk about is security culture. But, I said that there is no security. So as a good discipline is don't use things that give you the false sense of security. Don't use things like Signal. I hate it when people say, get Signal, this app's secure. It's like, what are the chances that app's secure, man? It's like, you don't know who wrote the thing. The best motivation for somebody to write a secure app is that they work for the NSA, right? The primary motive for guys to put out a secure communication app is the NSA. And Top Yacht and these guys, they put these things out so they can monitor, and they tell everybody this is really secure, and every stupid dickwad goes and falls for it, and you have all these cipher nerds, and and they're always linear thinkers, right? They always think, but I've said so many times, it's like, it's like the Germans with the Enigma machine. The Germans utterly rely on the maths, and they say the Germans couldn't believe that the Enigma machine was cracked, because every time they looked at it, they said they got some egghead who said, like, it's impossible because look at the number of rotors. It would take 1,000 years, 1,000 monkeys, 1,000 years to crack one message this way. And we'll add an extra rotor on just in case. And now it's 100,000, million monkeys. But okay, now it's secure. And they never thought that it's the human end. It's the humans that they always crack. They always crack cryptographic methods. I think it was Conan Doyle or something. He got into cryptography. When they tried in that era, they tried everything to find an absolutely secure cipher, and they eventually gave up. They said, "There's nothing you can do that can actually do that." And then now they do Diffie-Hellman and then like two-factor authentication and all of these things, and it's like you always get around with the human thing. I keep on telling all these guys, it's not about how long it would take you to compute the keys and get the right. The guys, if they want to get you, you've got a chip inside your computer. If they used to say Intel inside, but like Intel is a branch of the CIA. So yeah, any key you compute there, it was done with a random number generator from Intel. Do you think Intel makes all random numbers just like, evenly distributed? Well, they do in the thing, but if they want to get you, you'll notice that your machine will crash or your phone will crash and it'll demand a new update. And when you get the new update, it's fucking going to basically tell the microcode that Tom's machine no longer does quite as many random numbers as we did. In fact, this little narrow range of numbers that we pre-computed in rainbow tables. So a genius mathematician who tells Hugh that, oh no, you're such a dickhead, you fucking cooked, because otherwise you don't know anything about cryptography, because it would take 1,000 million years to compute. And I say, of course it would. That's why they're not going to do it, you big chump. They're just going to go for the fucking chip in your machine. And then like, oh, but that's cheating. Well, yeah, this is total war, you moron. So they say, well, but that's terrible. My whole world, I was into cryptography, and I had this secure voting chain and this beautiful Bitcoin and secure currency and this thing that I'm going to do. And say, well, your whole world's just fucking falling in on itself. And you say, like, so what's the protection? The protection is, don't try and outsmart the machine. Not that way. Don't brute force them. It's basically take it as read that everybody is listening to this. Hello in Jerusalem. Are you there? Tel Aviv, come in. Tel Aviv, come in. This is the Extinctionati. We know you're out there. So it's like they're on the fucking call, right? So just don't think you got privacy or shit like that there. But here's another thing. They have to. I told you that they have to get in. They're looking for aspiration or operation, right? So Gary was surprised that I said stuff this morning that sounds operational. What I was saying is, here's the defense: is as far as I can tell, what I proposed in this morning's thing is legal. Now, there's another defense that they also have to prove intent. Yeah? So if you look at my book, it's about firewalling off these things. So if you did an operation and you do it with a lone wolf, the lone wolf doesn't know who sourced all the material and stuff that basically is necessary, or even planned it. So then the lone wolf is almost impossible. It's good, unless you rat on yourself. If no one knows, no one can talk. So you can do any operation as a lone wolf, right? As long as you take act like a trained lone wolf. But everybody that finances it, sources it, if there are firewalls between them, see what they get people on is this RICO laws, right? So they're basically wire fraud and stuff. So then, so if anything like this was considered illegal, they would get everybody on this call for wire fraud, because we're using the internet. It's an old law that came, I think, back from the steam trains, where these bandits would rob steam trains in the Wild West, and they would use telegraphs. So you could use telegraphs and stuff. So if you used a telegraph, it gave you too much of an advantage to get a train. So they passed these draconian laws about wire fraud. And I think that was the origin of it. But anyway, it's this old, kind of bygone law that they, use today, because everything's digital now. So they can always chuck that in there. If you used a phone to do a bank robbery, it's wire fraud. So that's, but basically they're going to make the rules up as they go along. So the other thing is the RICO laws, where they have to show that everybody, the RICO laws came about for mafia and big crime. And so the organized crime. So the government is an organized criminal gang. The government is a protection racket, and they didn't like the competition from the mafia, because the mafia did it better than the government. So they tried to get the mafia off their turf and said, "Hey, these citizens belong to us. Fuck off." And the mafia said, "Come on, man, share." And then basically the RICO laws were based on getting the mafia. So but the RICO laws are designed to show that there was conspiratorial intent. They say, like, oh, Antonio got the car, and Mario was the getaway driver, and they show that all of these people worked together to do the heist. You see, so that's what the RICO laws are saying. But if you section it off, then it makes it very, very difficult, because you say, like, okay, if some guy got the car, but he didn't know what the fuck it was for, then it's very hard to basically prosecute it, because if this guy is told, you're going to drive the getaway car, say for what? And say, you won't know. So just sit here and some action will happen. So, like, what crime has he committed? It's like suddenly three guys get in the back and say, go. And then he's got, but until then, he wasn't conspiring. He wasn't doing anything. So you see that those firewalls are important. But the best thing of all is to do something that's not illegal. So, and that's what I think we're doing. But anyway, the mere fact that you're saying stuff in the open, in the clear, why you don't want to have a little private room and go, I want this, make sure it's an invitation only and shit like that, is because you are showing intent to conspiracy. You see, the mere fact that we're having this conversation now and we post it on YouTube, there's some protection in that. Because your defense attorney could argue that, it's like, if these guys were really conspiring to do some evil shit, would they have posted it in public on the internet and try to get viewers and stuff? It's like, it proves that the guys had no ill intent. Now, it's harder for a prosecution attorney to actually make this case. But at the end of the day, they will make up the law as they go. But you see what they're doing now with the police crimes bill. I just posted this new one. Is they're going after basically anybody that's anti-government, anti-authoritarian ideologies. So we're on the margin already. I mean, fuck, what have we done? Nothing. And we're already on the margin. So it's like, but here's the thing: we can go forward to do something that's, you just got to be that much smarter and play the game. It's a dance. But the thing I'm proposing is have a look at the Eastern meeting, and you can see. But I mean, as far as I can see, it's not illegal. So it's like we're basically just mimicking what Bill Gates and Scopex is doing and stuff. And so it's like, yeah, if he's doing it, we're doing it. And like he's doing it to save the fucking machine, and we're doing it to accelerate the end of the machine. But it's quid pro quo. It's basically we're not doing anything Bill Gates isn't doing. So fuck off. We're not terrorists. So in other words, you have to think up things that are devastating but not illegal. Those are the best of all. But every revolutionary comes to this. Everybody, like, that's part of the evolution as a revolutionary is like Hitler. Hitler went in the 1920s and tried a putsch. Basically he thought you could do January the 6th and just storm the Reichstag and take over, and basically what faulty things. And so you see what he miscalculated was how bad the state was. In other words, how ugly the state was underneath and what it's prepared to do to defend itself. And they didn't account for the fact that the guys would shoot the fuck out of them. They thought, like, really? They'd go that far? Yeah, they will. And so they got a little education with bullets. So then Hitler sat in Landau prison and thinking about it, and he realized the only way to do this is to do it legally. So you follow the rules and beat them. And you see, this is one of the reasons why they're so terrified with Hitler and the whole Nazi thing and stuff, is that he got to power legally. He did a legal putsch. And so and people like Trump and stuff, they're emulating him. But the ultimate victory is you play by their rules in a way that they never thought of. But you see, they're very linear thinking and slow. You have a look how long it took them to get the police crimes bill. The police crimes bill is good. It'll get these kids off the streets. It'll cut off an avenue of dissipation of their passion and resources. I mean, Extinction Rebellion is an utter waste of time. It's just a fucking psyops to distract the youth. But like that's it's done by Erica Chenoweth and the fucking State Department with Gene Sharp and all of this shit. It's just, this is standard fucking US, COINTELPRO and stuff abroad. So that's what Extinction Rebellion is. But it's great, because with their heavy-handedness, they shot themselves in the foot. They've cut off the youth access to that kind of ineffectual rebellion, and you're getting closer to the day when they radicalize. So it's like, and then you're really getting somewhere. So they're doing our job.
The other thing they've done with that as well, I didn't realize, because there was the protest, I think it was this weekend, wasn't it, or last weekend, was that it means that the other group of people that they've gone and bracketed into that is all the traveller communities, all the people that normally, like, are living in caravans on the side of the road. They're now going to be easy prey to say, yep, see you later, like, get you out of here. And I don't know, but they were all there, protesting their rights and whatnot. So XR have gone and fucked over that community as well.
You'll never get to the travelers, I tell you.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's all to the good, because what they're doing is they're building an underground society. They're basically, it's this linear thinking, stupid of Vogan boot. And it always works. They never fucking learn. I mean, has Preeti Patel picked up a fucking history book in her fucking life and just, has she even gone back as far as Margaret Thatcher? Basically, the government has a memory of a fucking goldfish in Britain. They can't even remember back to the 80s, and they're putting their foot in it again. So it's like, oh, great, it's all good for us. But anyway, the idea is to think up imaginative shits that and ops that aren't, that they think that they must go, damn, we should have thought of that. Isn't there a law against that? You say, no, there's a loophole. And they're like, damn. And there always is, right? You always move one step ahead. But anyway, we're well in the realm of doing psyops and stuff. So a lot of the acceleration and stuff is it's psyops. You see, okay, so the stuff we were going on this morning about was a lot like, you know, Uncle Ted. So we're struggling to get people to read the manifesto. It's virtually impossible. And so, you know, I was saying, like, you know, there's a good reason why Uncle Ted did what he did. Everybody says, well, he shouldn't have done that. You know, you must have been some other way to get people to read his manifesto. I said, no, there wasn't. So that no one would have heard of Uncle Ted if he didn't do what he did. He knew it. He's a super genius. So don't try and second guess him on that. That's what you have to do to get people to read a manifesto. And that was back in their days. Much worse today. So you have to think, well, I mean, you don't want to do what Uncle Ted did because it's not that day either. But yeah, basically you can get the same effect without doing that. So I'm saying, like, the same applies to Uncle Ted's thinking on anti-civ, right? So I was raising this thing this morning about the ineffectuality of, say, like the you know, the bombing campaign in Britain during, you know, in World War II. It didn't really knock out, you know, it didn't really disable Germany or its manufacturing. It basically had knocked out about 20% of its manufacturing capability at its best, I guess. But you see, if you actually got a mass anti-civ rebellion with Uncle Ted style, you know, you can't. There are bottlenecks and stuff, so you can do serious damage to the machine, but you have to know the machine extremely well, right? You can't just do like assault on gas installations. That's not going to make a dent in it. I mean, they're critical choke points, but it takes a long time to identify them, and you know, the guys who are already situated at those choke points, they know who they are. It's better to just reach them psychologically and encourage them to do what they lie awake at night thinking about is more effective. But I mean, in terms of you have an army of monkey wrenches and you have the monkey wrench gang going and disabling this machine, it's not possible. It's if you just did a headlong assault on the machine like that. But you see, you don't need to, because the armies don't go and blow things up or take territory or anything to actually get and physically hold that territory. It's psychological, right? Is you take, you know, like, you don't have it. Occupation of territory is psychological, right? You take territory in war and stuff like that just to prove to the enemy that they've lost. I mean, the idea that you actually hold on to the fields and mountains and villages and towns would be impossible if they didn't want. See, that's what happened in Crete. Is the notionally, the Germans won the Battle of Crete and took over Crete. In actual fact, they were just stuck on the coast, just in Chania and Rethymno and, you know, Heraklion and stuff. They were just on the little populated, basically in the towns. If they went outside the towns, they were dogs meat. So they didn't really conquer Greece. They were under siege all the time from, like, all these farmers and bastards wouldn't give up. So psychologically, the farmer said, "Look, I don't care what it looks like on paper. You know, you know, I'm going to take you out as soon as I see you." And so it's like, well, the Germans didn't have enough people to get around that. They just had to pretend, you know, and do brutality. They often did partisan revenge, collective punishments and stuff. But then that too counted against them. So it was a win. They couldn't win that way. But so anyway, I just say that all of these things are psychological. And so you're not really trying to deprive the enemy of material and supplies and stuff like Bomber Harris was. You can't really bomb somebody back into the Stone Age. I mean, okay, you can. Like Iraq, they used EMPs and stuff in Iraq. They have special weapons where they can take out your grid and infrastructure. But, like, yeah, Uncle Ted, anti-tech revolution, you can do that kind of stuff, right? But just think how sophisticated you have to be. I wrote in my book how you do that. But like, I hope I've got it across in my book that you have to know what you're doing. Right? You have to know all these systems. You have to know about satellite and aircraft backtracking and all of these things. See, they're going to get you with backtracking. They're not going to get you red-handed. So in other words, you don't really want to do that shit unless you're an expert, and you've got expert training. But here's the great thing: is you don't need to. You don't need to do that thing, because if you blew up, let's say, a gas LNG station, and it would be like an atomic bomb. Those LNG ships and that, they have so much energy in those tanks. They don't tell everybody. These things are in the East End of London. If one of those things goes off, basically, whether you just put an RPG in one of those things and you would take out half of London. But they don't tell anybody that, because they don't tell anybody about these kind of things. But the thing is, you wouldn't actually. It would probably be counterproductive to go through with that kind of arc, right? Because the only reason to do that was not to materially disadvantage the enemy. It's a psychological thing. You want it's all about mind war, right? So you could achieve the same effect without doing it. In some ways, if you fake the whole thing, say in a news, like fake news report and stuff, and then the government would have to go around to people saying, no, this was fake news. Nobody ever did an attack on this LNG station and stuff. That's even better, because in people's minds, they're thinking, A, the government's hiding something from them. B, man, are there people out there that are trying this? C, it's like, their own imagination is much worse than the actual event. You see, if they're all, suffering from the actual event, they're traumatized, and it's probably counterproductive. But if they're imagining that it could happen, that's actually a psychological advantage. So it's basically you don't want to actually do the things. You want to do the psychology of the thing. So anyway, I put this forward so that you understand a bit more about what I was talking about this morning. It's like, although it has to be presented in public as, yeah, these guys are fucking nuts and they're trying these nutty things, in actual fact, it's all fake. Okay.
What was the backtracking? Is that to do like finding your geolocation using algorithmic? It says something about algorithms.
No. So most of the surveillance. So the governments are really stretched very thin, right? So all the automation and stuff is basically, it's a manpower. It's to save on manpower, right? So it's just like a productivity tool, just like a laptop is a productivity tool for an office worker. So their productivity tools are AI. That's like now when we put this up on YouTube, then some they've paid Google to do stuff like voice recognition on all of the script. It writes a script. Then that script will be analyzed. It'll look for keywords and a bit of AI that says, rates this for threat worthiness. And then, you see, those are all productivity tools that just go through the machine. It doesn't really help them much, because at some stage, it just flags us as, oh, these guys are suspect. The machine can't actually go after you. They haven't got to judge dread status yet, or anything like that. So at some stage, some poor sap who's like an E3 in Eglin Air Force Base, and he's 19 years old, he has to come and sit down and do an actual threat analysis on what. And think of the poor ass. He's got to go through all these long videos and stuff, and he's only got he's got to go through like 10 of these in a day, or otherwise he's going to be marked down for basically being inefficient. It's like, how far can he go with us before he says, oh, these guys are a bunch of fucking wankers? Yeah, so it's like, so I hope I'm saying that, like, the way the machine works is all that automation is actually kind of almost a burden for them, and it's at some stage it becomes a human intelligence thing, and that's where the game starts. But you see, what happens is, if you bubble up through a certain threshold, and they flag you as, oh, these guys are seriously suspect. Okay, or really what they're looking for is an event. So if there's an event, then they do backtracking surveillance. So what I'm saying is all the surveillance and the machine, and they keep on telling you, you know, oh, you know, they hacked everybody's phones and that's trying to scare you. It's a psyop, an intimidation technique on the public. Or, you know, all the libs go like, oh no, this is terrible. Or they're looking at it, they say like, yeah, that's what they want you to think, man. Do you honestly think they have time to go through teenagers' phones? Of course not. So it's like, so none of this automation does them any good. But you see, if there's an operation, then they do backtracking surveillance. So they have loads of surveillance. We're all in an opticon. But if there's anything that needs investigation, then they have long threads to track back. So they have like low-flying aircraft that are just basically doing these big, wide area satellites and doing it. In the UK, in London, there's so many freaking surveillance cameras. There's one on every corner. And so what they do is you see, I'll just hang on, I'm unmuting. So what they do is they stitch together. It was a lot of the part of the stuff that they did after 9/11 was basically doing seamless backtracking. So in other words, you have all these cameras and stuff that can go and see Tom walking over Waterloo Bridge, and then they can match it up all the way, so they can track your whole journey through London through about 500 cameras, and they stitch them all together. So you can defeat it by, if you walk over Waterloo Bridge, if you know where the cameras are, you can walk over Waterloo Bridge, you can find a little spot where there's a blinding, you change into a red jacket, put on an orange wig, walk another 100 yards to change it again. They'll be fucked. But anyway, the whole thing is that they most of these things are in place. They're doing massive data collection, which they will never access. No human eye will ever see. It's all just part of the junk in the machine. And then, but if there's an investigation, then they'll use all of that stuff, and then it all comes into play. But
they are hugely stretched. I think the MI5 guy, head of MI5, came out. I think it was at the end of last year, and he was saying how many genuine threats they'd actually foiled, and I was surprised. It was a large amount that they had foiled. There's like over 50 plots or something crazy. I don't know how long. Maybe that's bollocks, but they are like.
No, they're not that many.
Okay, maybe
they're not that many. You see, most of the threats, the majority of the threats, are government sting operations, right? So they basically if you work for the FBI or something, you get a lot of kudos from cracking a big ring and stuff. Well, there are not enough big rings to support, there's not enough terrorism and stuff going on to support this massive security apparatus. So, of course, what they do is they create their own criminals so that they have some career choices. But the vast majority of things, it's just like the thing that happened in Michigan. So they do this thing about, how they're going to kidnap the governor of Michigan, and it's the Proud Boys and stuff. And it's like, it's two, poor kids, and they don't know their ass from their elbows. They would never come up with an operation in a million years. But the FBI, they basically, they come up with the plan, which was, kidnap the governor. They get the material, they get the weapons, they sourced all of this. They basically, all of it was basically entrapment. So they entrapped these two poor kids, and then they're all over the news. There's bloody right-wing terrorism. And so, no, that's the FBI doing a sting operation. And they never, you ask any libs now, they'll tell you, oh yeah, that's right-wing extremism. Nobody heard about the court case where they all came out, where it all fell apart because the prime witness, the prime witness, was a criminal. He was a cop who they lost their prime witness because he went to jail for another case. Like that, well, that never wound up on the on MSN or on the Legacy Minute. But I'm saying all of this because the vast majority of all these cases out there are government sting operations. They're manufacturing this stuff out of nothing. There's very, very little stuff going on.
There was obviously never any terrorism because nothing ever happened. So surely if there were terrorists, then terrorist things would happen. I mean, isn't that like I remember
it's a reasonable logic. I mean, look what happened with the IRA in London. It's like, you know, then there was real guys doing real stuff. And it's like, did they stop anybody? No, they didn't stop anybody.
No, exactly. I was
like now, oh, they're stopping 100%. Really? I'd rather believe that there was 100% of nothing going on.
Yeah, I think so. Because I remember, yeah, being in London in the 90s, and there was bombs going off here and there, and they actually happened, those things. I remember being near enough one to hear the bang. And so you go, well, if people want to do a terrorist thing, and I never understood, you know, I don't know how to make bombs myself. I shouldn't say that, should I? But, you know, it was always described as someone went to the garden centre and bought a bag of stuff, and then some building blew up in London. And so you think, well, if that's all it takes and it ain't happening, there ain't a terrorist threat. And it was like after the 9/11 thing, there was all that anthrax business, and it seemed to be that it was done by the US, whoever, and it all got traced back to a US establishment of some sort. But by and large, and this always occurred to me, that if you basically sort of broke down on the M25 and then decided to do something terroristic, you know, basically we were sold this story that there were all these maniacs out there who wanted nothing but to randomly go around killing people, and that they didn't care whether they lived or died as a result. But yet not a single thing ever happened afterwards.
No, there are quite a lot of lone wolves, right? So there are a lot of nutcases out there, but you see, what they're trying to pretend is it's organized, and these groups like the Proud Boys and stuff. That's all fiction, right? So, but again, their big worry is the lone wolves, because they're lone wolves. They only catch them after the event. They can't prevent them.
But they're obviously still not
they try and convince the public that they're doing the sleuthing job and finding these things and breaking them up. And it's like, well, if you look at the IRA or Bader-Meinhof, is when they really were doing that, they would wind up cornering them in an apartment block, and there'd be a shootout and stuff. There's none of that going on, so you know that they're not cornering Proud Boys and stuff like that.
Well, there has been quite a lot of lone wolf, like Islamic terrorist attacks in the last 4 years. There's been like 4. I can remember there was Lee Rigby, the soldier that got decapitated or half decapitated. There was the Manchester bombing thing. There was the London Bridge. There's 2 of those, wasn't there? Oh, there was the guy that went into that
knife
church.
Yeah.
So those are all like Islamic terrorists.
Yeah,
you know.
but, okay.
Yeah, but these are lone guys. These are lone nuts, right?
Yeah, and again, compared to like we don't think twice about getting run over. How many thousands of people get run over? I know that's trite, but you know, so in the grander scheme of things, if somebody goes nuts in London and stabs somebody, again, that might be an act of terrorism, or like angry teenagers or whatever they say. But it's not really a phenomenon. I agree that there doesn't seem to be any organized, in the sense that the government has these like billions of pounds being spent on alleged sort of surveillance and interdiction, and there's all these school programs and stuff.
Yeah, and all of this counts against the government anyway, because they're making people nutty, they're making people psychotic, they're making more and more lone wolves and conspiracy theorists. So the government's their own worst enemy. So this is how the system goes down. This is what I was trying to say to Ryan, is that, you know, the system, it takes itself down. The seeds of the system's destruction are built into
it. This is like obviously probably not true at all, but apparently, so last September, director of MI5 said a total of 31 late-stage terror plots have been foiled in the UK in the past 4 years. Director General Ken McCallum, who revealed in October there had been 27 attacks thwarted since 2017, said there had been 6 during the pandemic. He said they were largely Islamic extremist plots, but a growing number were planned by right-wing terrorists. Yeah, so.
Yeah, but
I don't believe any of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't believe any of that.
That's the BBC, so
No,
don't believe
But
it.
I mean, it all is
BBC
what do you classify? So there's strong pressure for these guys to come up with nothing, just like the Iraq War of coming up with weapons of mass destruction that weren't there. Because if you put enough pressure on a cop to say, oh, was this guy a Muslim? Okay, call it an Islamic terrorist case. We get brownie points. I mean, that's what Blair found, is if you incentivize the cops in all these perverse ways, then sure, you'll get the numbers you want. But like, is it real? Of course not. It's for sure.
Yeah, there was stuff about with the London tube bombings way back in the day. They traced at least one of the people involved had some, was being looked at by British security, whatever that means, and was allowed, or was being tracked when they went to wherever to go to terrorist training and all of this. And there always seems to be some involvement where the events that do happen end up being allowed to happen or something like this. Because the guy went to
Patsy's is the same with the 2005 tube and bus bombings in London. But
no, exactly that.
There's a guy that's done an investigation into all that, and it is like, it's so obvious. It's all just like false flags.
That was the same with Timothy McVeigh. He was a patsy, and all these real operations, they include a patsy. Of course they do. So it's like, anyway, you can tell the flavor of these things that they junk. But anyway, the whole point of this this thing is the environment that we're going to have to navigate, and it's part of the weather in a way. But yeah, I mean, you don't get anywhere in this kind of environment by being a goody two shoes, right? And
may I say something? May I shift the thing from what we're talking about, security, before we can come back to it later on, but I just wanted to remind you that this morning in the meeting we just touched the subject of meditation, and we were talking. You were saying that it would be better to approach a group thing in a kairos type of optics. So I'm just putting this in brackets that we might touch that before the end of the meeting, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah. So no, the only thing I wanted to say more is just to warn people that, like, if anybody comes up to you with a scheme and they have this elaborate plan to, do such and such a thing, and it's illegal, it's like, the guy's a cop. I'll give you 9 out of 10. I mean, no, 10 out of 10. It's a cop. Okay. So the best thing to do in those things is either, I mean, if the guy is that stupid, he deserves to be sent down anyway. So you would report the guy. So the best thing you could do is to report the guy. There's no legitimate person is going to come to you with some fucking scheme. It doesn't work that way. So, and he's going to tell you the plan and say he knows this guy who could get the stuff and convince you to do it. It's like, that's a cop. Report him to his boss. Say he's a shit cop. Say like, and you'll know straight away he's a cop because nothing will happen. You'll know straight away he's a cop because fuck all will happen. It's basically you report this thing where this guy was going to do this heinous act, and they go, yeah, okay, we'll look into it, and then fuck all happens. You're like, okay, right. Anyway, so okay, that's the end of that subject. So the meditation thing. So yeah, So Gary wanted to do this thing where we just try kind of a bit of a woo thing, which I would also like to do, and just see if we can, you know, dial into the same wavelength on the intersubjectivity synchronicity telephone and do a bit of telepathy and stuff around the world. And I'm up for that. I'm keen, but I said to Gary that I don't think everybody's ready for that. I think it's a bit too woo for people. And I said, anyway, it'll happen. I said, basically, because the longer you go on and you build the same egregore, you will see like, just like Tom, right? Tom was like called in on that call and stuff. And you'll see more and more of that happen. So I said to Gary, you know, let everybody thaw out a bit. You know, not everybody likes that kind of stuff. In fact, nobody does. And so they get kind of used to it, and you know, they'll basically just seamlessly get just drift to that. So anyway, the idea was to find a definite time for the meditation, and I thought, so Sophie was saying, you know, about maybe just after one of these meetings, just carry on with it or something. And I had this thought that we're all trying to synchronize around the world. That's the whole point there. So there's a kind of dichotomy, because we're anti-chronos, and the whole point of meditation stuff is anti-chronos. And then we're trying to synchronize. We're trying to use chronos to sync. It's kind of the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. But anyway, we live by the clock in this suicidal hell. So this, but I was trying to think, can we think up any way where we could make it more kairos? And so, in other words, it'd be based on an event. So, you know, anything you like, and you can predict a news event, and then everybody would go and meditate, and then you compare notes later. If you you know, the weather, anything, you could look for a signal going around. You say, like, I don't know, the weather in Moscow. You say, if the weather in Moscow is cloudy, and you notice it, then we meditate. And yeah, whatever.
Well, the moon,
I think
the moon is a good thing too.
Yeah, but the moon is sidereal. That is chronos, right? But
can I?
But I mean, yeah, but it would work. It would work. Yeah.
In the chronos kairos relationship, doesn't being a slave of chronos mean that you're kind of following a clock in an oppressive sort of fashion? So in other words, if you're following the moon, yeah, it's a kind of fixed timing, but it's still a sort of you're naturally following the sort of, or if you're, I don't know, I suppose you need to be considerate of the tides when you're doing stuff. So is it not chronos more to follow like clock time and in a way that,
but
right?
No, it's still chronos technically, but I agree. It's like, it's a hell of a lot better than 8 o'clock UTC or something.
Yeah,
else like that. That sucks balls.
Because I thought, yeah, going like, yeah, okay, yeah, no, I think I get the idea anyway.
But Sophie, that's what you're objecting to, right? That you didn't want to have like a set time. Is that right? Oh wait, you're on mute.
Sorry, the initial idea was, when I was talking with Joe about it, is that that we could get together, all of us, well, whoever's interested, once a week or something, at the same moment to see what happens with meditation, because it's kind of, you know, it was not just a motivation but an experiment. Now, how we do it is all open to anybody's suggestions. I started saying we could do it when the meeting is over, and then we could just, you know, get offline, and then suddenly just all of us together would do it for a while, or we could do any other things. I think it's open to. I like the idea of using Kairos time. It's yeah, but it's an exercise, isn't it, in itself?
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned those. I can't remember what they're called, Sidley points or Shelley points or whatever that I mentioned in the Darwin videos about how things naturally synchronize.
Well, it would be interesting to see if we let it go for a while without putting a time or a day, and we all of us kind of, when we felt that the time is, and then report feedback a bit to the others and say, well, at that time or that day or whatever I was, I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds like that could be interesting if everybody just do what they feel they want to do and see whether there's any connecting factors when we sort of touch base about it. That would be interesting. Is that kind of what Gary was talking about?
Yeah.
So that, I mean, yeah. So I guess if we then maybe log what we do, or I suppose if one's doing it and then we consider whether, I don't know, maybe I would feel some, oh, now everyone else is doing something, and just see if we all concur. Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting idea.
Yeah, maybe just have a meeting and just talk about what we did in the week or something. It will, when we did it and when and so. Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if people said like, right, you did it exactly. I knew it. I could feel you were doing it. That would be nice.
Yeah, that would be interesting, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, should we try it this week? We just say like, okay, should we leave it wide open? We just say like, we'll just look for clues, just random shit, and then say that prompted us to do it. So then we would say like, we will just try and keep our eyes open during the week for some random shit. And you say like, I bet you that's a signal to say that like, Bob's meditating now. I know he is because you got that signal. And then you go and do it. And write down record the time and stuff, and let's see how far off we are and what comes out. Would that?
Yeah, I'm ashamed to admit that my sessions now are being recorded by an app, so it's all being reported back to the man.
Kronos!
Yeah. Or maybe I'll stop doing that then and see what happens. But my timings are fairly
try look for like some odd thing, butterfly, swallow, news event, and say like, you're pretty sure that would have triggered everybody to do it.
I think the cues could be
something saying, if you see this, meditate.
The cues could be totally internal, like signals that you pick up, and without even an event or an object or something in your universe, in your material universe. It could be something that you feel at the time, and that's what we could report to the others, and say, well, that day
or a thought in your head.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's even okay, it seems like the acceptance of woo is quite high here. So like, let me go one woo step higher. When you start meditating, the first thing is try and dial in and reach everybody else to say like, if you're out there, Sophie, I'm meditating now, and we'll try and meet in this meta space or something. So you try send signals out and stuff.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Yeah.
Woo woo.
Yeah, but it's fun, man. It's fun woo.
It's far out, man.
You'll be very, very surprised how. I'm not expecting a lot at first, but you do this for a couple of years, and you'll be fucking amazed. I mean, think about it. It's if you want to ground it in something not so woo, is eventually a group gets to know each other so well that you just say like, I know Sophie so damn well. I know that she's meditating now. And so, it's not all that woo, really. You just get to know everybody else, and you can.
Sophie, did you do any meditation earlier when you went out walking?
No.
That's a shame. No. I actually did about sort of 5 or 10 minutes. I walked up into some woods.
And I think
meditation.
don't. I mean, I think you have to drop all timetable and all planned hour for your meditation in the morning, first thing before your cup of tea, or following your app. You need to do it completely spontaneously when you feel that.
Yeah, that was it. It was a spontaneous. I hadn't planned to. I was going for a walk
I
anyway,
think
but I found a nice
that
quiet
would be
spot.
very interesting. Yeah. You muted, Hugh.
I mean, maybe let's report back in this meeting. So keep a log, and then let's report back in this meeting and just see what happened and how everybody's meditation went. But maybe it's just it won't. I'm sure it won't take too long just in this meeting to sync up. All right. Well, yeah. So anyway, have a look at the earlier meeting, the Eastern meeting on the video, and then there was a lot generated in that. So I still feel like we got to do more on the manifesto. I want to do a basic video on the flippening and how basically put that out in an easy to understand video. And I shopped the manifesto around, so please shop the manifesto around and stuff. But you'll see on the earlier thing, I did the experiment that Ryan suggested that we have a go and see what I came up with. But anyway, the idea is we try and do this op in India or China, basically in the Himalayas. Exciting shit. Okay, so anyway, give it a little thought and tell me. I still feel we should have more time on acceleration because I'm still sure I still don't get a read on what everybody really thinks about this. So maybe next Sunday we'll do it again. All good? All right, so should we round it off then? Right? Then, like, anybody got any questions? Anything like raised in this thing? Alrighty. Okay, so wait. It's hard. Okay, so like let's just pause and like sign out with by giving everything up and holding on to nothing from this meeting. No attachments, no fears, no thoughts, no desires, no wishes. Just leave it neutral. Whatever you came in with, put back on and leave everything else at the door and fall still. And so Om Paramatma Namah. Good, everybody. Nice to see you all today. It's like, have a nice week.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thanks
you.
very much. That was good.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
See you, everyone.